Hello everybody and thank you for joining me. This is Sierra from Sierra T Designs and today I am hanging out on the ScrapbookPal YouTube channel. So let's jump right in. So I'm going to create an A2 sized card, which is 4¼ by 5½, and I like to cut my cardstock down so that I know what size I'm working with. So my silver mat is about a 1/16 of an inch smaller than my A2 base, and then my panel is about an 1/8 of an inch smaller than my base. I generally don't really measure things. I kind of eyeball it. So that's, an approximate measurement. But I just like a thin layer around the borders. So for this card, I got to use the Pinkfresh Studios Farm Fresh stamps, dies, and stencils. So it's really fun because it all goes together and makes it quite quick to make a card. And I'm going to stamp out these floral images twice, making sure that they are in the corner of my MISTI because I do want to restamp them later, which can always be a bit of a nerve-wracking thing after you've colored them. But thankfully with the stencils, it is pretty easy to color these. So that's pretty lucky. So as I said, I am going to stamp these out twice. I am stamping them out in a dark black ink. This is the VersaFine Onyx black, and I am going to stamp it. I believe I stamped it twice just to get a really good impression. And then I am going to use a bunch of oxide inks to color these. I mean, you could use any ink that you have in your stash or any ink, there's tons of inks on the market, but the oxides are my favorite ink because you can do so many things with them. And I chose 2 different colors from each family. So I ended up with a later ink as my base, and I'm just going to use some blending brushes to kind of color them in. The first time I go through these, I did mask off the other areas of the stencil. The second time I do this, I'm not going to. I didn't feel like it was really needed. As long as you don't have a huge blending tool, it's pretty easy to kind of keep it right where you need it. And luckily there's so many different tools on the market now that, you can buy big ones or little ones, whatever you like to work with. And ScrapbookPal has a bunch of them. So you can always go and check them out if you're in the market for some blending tools. So for my colors, for the pinks, I'm going to use Kitsch Flamingo and Picked Raspberry. For the yellows, I used Squeezed Lemonade and Mustard Seed. The oranges was Spiced Marmalade and Ripe Persimmon. For my purples, I used a Shaded Lilac and Wilted Violet. And then for the leaves, I chose to use some green and some blue. I like the rainbow colorway. That's kind of what I was aiming for here. I mean, you could go, a little more neutral. You could do whatever your color choices are, but I do tend towards vibrant, bright colors. So for the leaves, I chose to go in with Twisted Citron and Mowed Lawn. And then for the other leaves, I wanted to do blue because I had no blue in this at this point. So I used Tumbled Glass and Mermaid Lagoon. I felt like these really went together. And the oxides, because I'm layering the darker color on top of the lighter color, it shows through beautifully without really making it look like you've added several different colors. Because the way the stencils are made, you are overlapping the colors. So it's not like it's blocked off the bottom of that pink flower and you could add a different color. You could, the oxides would blend beautifully for that, but it wouldn't give you 2 stark different colors. Like if I put orange over top of it, say, you would have just a pink shaded orange because the area is open. So all you're doing is adding color on top of color as opposed to adding color on like white areas because they were masked. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. That's why I chose to go with this. Otherwise, I think that it would have been really pretty to say have like pink and orange on that one large flower and kind of do it a bit different. But just the way the stencil was designed, I felt like it made more sense and more impact to just do a darker color on top of the areas. And with the green leaves, there's actually only one shaded area. For that, I kind of feel like it's a lilac or I think, is that the tall one? I always forget the names of the flowers. With the purple flower, that's the one I've made purple. There is no shading to those leaves. So you only got to add the mowed lawn once, but I think that it still looks really pretty. And then this is always the most nerve-wracking part. I find that oxides, when you go over top of black lines with the oxides, they do tend to mute them a bit. I don't know if that's the best word for it, but they kind of overpower your dark lines. And I really wanted the dark lines to stand out. I think that they look really pretty that way. So I did choose to restamp these after everything was colored. And luckily for me, it lined up perfectly. So there was no issues there, but that is always a little bit nerve-wracking. And then I brought in the matching dies for this set. So in the die set, you actually get two different vase, depends on how you want to say it. You get two different versions of it. This one has this really cool like etched detail to it, and I chose to use this one. The other one is open, so there's no etching detail in it. Both are beautiful, and I did seriously think about using vellum for this because I thought that would also look really pretty, but in the end I chose to go with silver because I did want this to be with a little bit of silver in it. That's kind of how I saw the card in my head when I got assigned these products. So I really wanted to kind of focus on that and have that be what I focused on. So the vase is silver in this instance, but you could do so many cool things with this that would just look stunning. And I did run this through my die cutting machine. I just have it sitting off screen, and I kind of had to fight to get that tape. It is a low tack tape, but honestly, it holds on kind of seriously. It's the Spellbinders yellow low tack tape, and it's a bit grabby. So be aware of that if you're going to use it. Just put your fingers on it a few times to kind of remove some of the stick, and then it should work beautifully. Here I am stamping out a sentiment from that same stamp set, and there is a matching die for this. You're going to see me run it through here in a second. Sadly, I did not realize that there was a bunch of ink still on this plate, my die cutting plate here. So it's going to transfer a bunch of ink to my sentiment. So I'm not going to do it on camera, but I do cut it out twice more so that I can layer it up and give it a little more dimension. But yeah, it did add just a little bit of black smears to my sentiment, and I didn't like that, so I ended up stamping it a second time. And then I'm just going to use one of them to layer it up as well. And then you can see that I've made a bouquet. That took me forever, so I did not leave that footage in. It would have been pretty boring to watch me, kind of try to work through where I wanted each flower. But all I really did was I kind of laid them down how I liked them on the card. And then I put the vase in front of it to kind of make sure that all of the stems were going to stay underneath where the vase was going to sit. And then I used some of that same low tack tape I used earlier to mask the stencil and just wrapped it around the stems so that I could keep them together in a way that I liked. There's no real rhyme or reason to it. It was just the easiest way for me to get the bouquet to look the way I wanted it to. And then for a little bit more interest in the background, I did kind of wrap a white and silver twine just around the card. I didn't have a bow. I had no intention of adding a bow. I just wanted that in the background because I thought that it added some interest to this very plain panel. I struggled to leave this panel plain, I'm going to be honest. If you guys are familiar with me and my crafting style, I do tend towards a more is more crafting style. So I really had to rein myself in to let this background just be white and just have these stunning flowers show up as the most beautiful element on this card. And of course, Mist had to come and double check that what I was doing was correct. And I guess she approved because she left pretty much right after, so it was okay. And then I'm going to add just a touch of foam tape behind my vase just so that the string isn't pushing it up. I think it would have made kind of a funny bow in my vase if I hadn't. So I just put a little bit of foam tape just above and below where that the string is sitting or twine, so that I didn't have to worry about it bowing when I tried to adhere it. And then here I'm going to lift my flowers up and just adhere them from underneath. This is just because I like where they're sitting and I'm worried I'm not going to get them back in the same place. So I just hold them with my hand and lift them up and add some adhesive. And then I did the same with the vase once I removed the backing tape for that foam tape. I'm just going to layer it where I want it to sit, making sure that, of course, the vase covers that yellow tape that I have kind of holding those flowers all together, and then just slowly adding glue wherever I need it to make sure that everything stays adhered properly. And then this is where we're just kind of layer everything up. So at this point, I'm going to add some adhesive behind the card. I added it on my twine as well, just to make sure that the twine holds to this silver cardstock. I really didn't want it to shift around once I kind of had it where I wanted it. So I'm making sure that everything stays adhered properly. And you did see me use some double-sided tape to make sure that the twine stayed where I wanted it once I had it kind of wrapped around that card panel. And honestly, that's just for added texture. You don't need it if you don't want it. Another great way to add some texture to this and keep it white would be to run it through an embossing folder. I think that that would also be stunning and add just a really subtle texture in the background of this card and would look beautiful. And then I brought in a couple of the Honeybee Cool Pearls. These are beautiful. They're in so many different shades, and there's this really pretty silver shade in there. I started with the silver ones, and then I realized that I grabbed the wrong color. So you're going to see me lay those down. And this is when I realized that I've done the wrong color. So I'm going to lift them back up. Luckily, they are pretty forgiving. So I was able to lift them back up without damaging my card panel and just stick them back on that backing sheet and then grab the silver ones. I just happened to grab the wrong color by accident because they're pretty similar. You could get away with the other pearls. They're slightly different. Like you'd have to be paying quite a bit of attention to the colors to even notice that they're not the right color. But I noticed, so of course I had to fix it. And then I just added a couple of pearls around the card just because I think that that really gives it a pretty and finished look. And I love pearls. They are one of my favorite embellishments to add to a card. They just give it a little bit of something extra that's just beautiful. And now at this point, I had to add some glitter. As I said, I am a more is more style crafter, so I do have a hard time sometimes stopping myself from just adding all the things. So I did come in with just my clear Spectrum Noir glitter pen and just added that on top of all of the flower buds. And you will see me wipe it off every time I switch colors of the flowers. That's just because the oxides are water soluble, so they will try to move. So I don't want to introduce those colors into each other. So I don't want to move, say, the purple onto the yellow. That will create brown, stuff like that. So I'm just wiping off my pen before I touch the next color. And be aware that this can move your oxide ink just a little bit. I'm very careful. I kind of stay within that flower so that even if the ink moves a touch, it won't really be noticeable. But I think that this card turned out super pretty. I would love to know what you guys think. Please leave us a like, leave us a comment, and consider subscribing if you haven't already. There are a lot of very talented creators on this channel, so come and check them out. Thank you so much, guys, and I will see you again very soon. Bye-bye for now.